So this is always remember, everyone, always remember that in big bear markets, that's where the next billionaires and millionaires are made. It's not buying Bitcoin at 65,000 and then watching it flush. It's when do you have the guts to step up in a bear market?
And yet we're not seeing a dramatic collapse of the Bitcoin price from, let's say, 6 months ago. You know, you would recall that Bitcoin has been dropping steadily and dramatically in the first half of the year, but you know, it's ironic to me that even following the collapse of Celsius, even following the collapse of FTX, which happened in the last month, Bitcoin didn't tumble to another 50% from its June highs, for example. That's very interesting to me, how things on the macro picture seem to be getting worse, yet the price is holding steady.
Yeah, so as bearish as I was when we were at 65 to 69,000, I would say I'm lukewarm now on Bitcoin.
Okay.
It doesn't mean I think the bottom is in, but you're right. Let's take a look at the chart of Bitcoin. This is something I want to show you guys. This is the drop on the Terra Luna collapse, and we dropped from about 31,000 and change down to about 17 and change. And so that drop was about 40+%. Now, if you look at the collapse of FTX, Bitcoin only dropped 25%. And so you could argue that FTX was a much bigger blow up in terms of institutional money being involved and kind of the earthquake that it caused, yet Bitcoin dropped less. And so to me, I take that as a signal that says, okay, it's not the end yet, but we're getting there. And so a couple of the analysis points. So number one, I looked at the comparisons of FTX's blow up and the Lehman Brothers collapse in 08, noticing again, Lehman was a bank, it collapsed. An exchange, FTX, kind of like a bank, but in crypto, it collapsed. Now, how long did the S&P 500 take to bottom after Lehman Brothers? And the answer is it took about 6 months. So then extrapolate that out and say, okay, in 6 months from now, we might be seeing the bottom in Bitcoin. Human emotion, you could say, oh, well, that's stocks, this is crypto, but the answer is it's all the same. And the reason it's the same is because humans, you and me, we're the buyers and sellers. And does your emotion change? Does my emotion change? No, greed and fear. It's what rules the market. The S&P, when Lehman collapsed, fell another 45% from that point, from that collapse, before it bottomed in March 09. In that case, we should see Bitcoin fall approximately 45% more from approximately that, breakdown level around 18,000 and change. To me, that gives me a target just below 10,000. And keep in mind that max pain is caused when even numbers are broken. You'll see a ton of stops run at 10,000. That could be the bottom when it breaks into the 9,000. The three factors, always remember, an investor has 3 factors to them. Number one is personal discipline. So you have to be a disciplined investor. Number 2 is human psychology. And that's this part where charts will match up. History repeats, generally, or at least rhymes, because of the human emotion and the human psychology. And the last is understanding how to read that through the charts.
Gareth, going back to the Bitcoin price, it's interesting also to note that Bitcoin has historically, in the last 2 years or so, been very much correlated with the NASDAQ. And just in the last 6 months or so, that correlation hasn't been very steady, shall we say. The NASDAQ has continued to fall while Bitcoin has been trading range bound. For the exception of the Luna collapse and the FTX collapse, those were anomalies, right? But more or less, it's been trading range bound. Some analysts have even gone as far as to say that Bitcoin has been correlated to gold. And if you just look at the charts, that does seem to be the case. Now, is that correlation a coincidence, or is there something more underneath the hood?
I think Bitcoin is starting to get into that mode of being between the two, right? So this goes with the predictions, right, for 2023, where the NASDAQ and the S&P are going to continue down. But what I'm saying is Bitcoin's going to actually bottom out and actually start to turn up in 2023. So that means it has to decouple from risk assets. And the key to this is going to be regulation. As much as everyone hated the idea of regulation in crypto, now we see an FTX scenario and everyone's saying, all right, well, you need some transparency. You need audits. You need to see the books on these players. There has to be rules where they can't take customer funds and put it in other places. And I think that's going to be the key that really starts to trigger Bitcoin's next move up, is when you get regulation, institutions will finally start to come back to invest in Bitcoin.
Gareth.
And remember this, right? Before it wasn't popular with people, now people have been burned so much that it's popular. That means the politicians will act.
People only want regulation when everyone's burned.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you think altcoins will outperform BTC next year?
Wow. I think that
Let's just define altcoins, because people have different definitions. Strictly speaking, an altcoin is anything that is not Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, right.
But let's take out Ethereum, because that's also big. So anything besides Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin.
I think if it survives, yes. And I think investors have to really think about what they're investing in, because remember, we don't even know what what's a security, what's a commodity. If it's a security, which is basically almost anything but Bitcoin, what are the rules that are going to be applied? What's the level of entry? Remember, to be listed on the NASDAQ, it costs a lot of money. So I have a feeling that there's going to be costs, like levels to entry, and there's going to be a lot of coins that can't handle that, including the transparency side.
Yeah.
And we don't know this. And again, you go through something like Terra Luna, you go through something like FTX. As an investor, those were mega market cap cryptos. You have to be really careful, and I'm sure there are more, things to fall.
And when Bitcoin was still edging towards that $69,000, you and I were talking about the Bitcoin spot ETF. That was all the hype back then. What happened to that?
So, I mean, it's still a way to trade. I just don't like it because you have slippage as the contracts roll over. So I really hope that they do come out with a real ETF. I think that would open and be a huge bull factor for Bitcoin. Don't expect it before regulation. But yeah, I think that I still remember that vividly because we talked about how in 2017, they launched the futures, right? So they launched the futures when Bitcoin was at its all-time highs, and then here, and when Bitcoin was at its all-time highs, they launched the spot ETF or the ETF. The futures ETF.
I wonder if that's going to change anything right now with all these crypto exchanges and firms and collapsing and contagion spreading throughout the sector. If another big exchange collapses, we're probably done.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I don't think that Bitcoin will be done. I think there's inherent need for someone or something to be there that we can invest in or at least store our money in. But I do think that other cryptocurrencies are going to struggle.
Light Shadows says, Gareth is the oracle of crypto.
Well, so for the next bull market, the only ones I feel mentioning are Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I'll stick with two right now.
Should we be worried about Bitcoin price if and when a CBDC is implemented? We touched on this briefly.
Yes, so I don't think it's a competitor to Bitcoin. I think it's a competitor to the.
And I think they mean a Fed coin, because we have currently 8 countries around the world that have CBDCs already. Most of them are in the Caribbean, oddly enough. But yeah, a CBDC be implemented here in the West.
Yeah, so I don't think it's an issue for Bitcoin. I think that, again, anything the central bank produces, they're going to have their finger on the printing button, just like they do with fiat currencies. And it's just going to be like, okay, well, do we need more? Well, let's print more. Now let's take some away. And so it doesn't solve any of the issues that Bitcoin potentially solves as the digital gold, right? That scarcity aspect. So if I'm looking at that, I'm more concerned about the stable coins and how does that fluctuate with them? How do they handle that?
What do you think about the interview with Garath Soloway? And if you are planning to invest in crypto again, what coins are you going to aim for? Before you leave, check out this video and don't forget to leave a like to the video and turn on the notifications to keep yourself updated with the crypto world as we upload content daily.